For the best prices and service on Pokemon TCG singles and products, check out ccgcastle.com and use promo code Evolutionaries-5 for 5% off your next order.
What's up, guys? Aiden here, and for this Deck Tech Thursday, we're going to be taking a look at a brand new deck that came straight from Forbidden Light, and that deck is going to be Zygarde GX. Now, this deck has a lot of potential going for it. I'm not sure of how high tier it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be like high like Ultra Necrozma or Naganadel, but it's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with. I guarantee you that. And who knows, maybe it really will be a high tier thing. Cannot say for sure, because Forbidden Light brought a lot more to the meta than people first expected. So I'm going to start off here with my Pokemon lineup, and it's going to be 4 copies of Zygarde GX. And I will just give you guys a closer look at Zygarde here since he's brand new. So he is a basic type, 200 HP fighting type Pokemon. So that already is pretty decent, with 3 attacks. The first one's Cell Connector. For a double colors, does 50 damage, and you attach 2 fighting energy cards from your discard pile to this Pokemon. So it has a way to accelerate energy onto himself, which is really, really good, because its other 2 attacks require 2 fighting and 2 colorless. Lazbreath, just 130, we're not going to really focus on that one, but the main point in this deck is going to be Verdict GX. So 2 fighting, 2 colors, does 150, and you prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from Pokemon GX and EX during your opponent's next turn. So against pretty much the whole meta, for a turn he's invincible. So ordinarily GX you can only use once a game, but this is something I called so long ago. We actually do have a way to kind of sort of reset Zygarde GX. It's not exactly resetting the GX counter like I thought, but it is a way to use his GX attack over and over, which I'll go over that after I go over the rest of our Pokemon here. So another new card we got from Forbidden Light is going to be Buzzhole, just a regular non-GX Ultra Beast, 130 HP, not too bad. And the main attack here we're going to be focusing on is Sledgehammer. For a single fighting, does 30 damage, and if your opponent has exactly 4 prize cards, which is very common, this attack does 90 more damage. So pretty much it's a non-GX attacker that can do a lot of damage in the right conditions. And also it's a way to get around Hoopa, because for a lot of decks like this, Hoopa is a big problem. So definitely an awesome way to get around Hoopa. And the other attacks, Swing Around, you don't really focus on because we don't ever want to attach 3 fighting energy to Buzzle. Never, ever. So really good non-GX attacker for whenever you need. And that's actually, it's also a single fighting energy. So even if your opponent does not have 4 prizes, for a single fighting, you boost it up, because we have so many ways to boost this up. It's still not bad overall. And speaking of boost up, we run 1 copy of the new Diancie Prism Star and 1 copy of Regirock EX. So the Diancie is actually really amazing. It's 120 HP basic fighting type, and it's got the ability Princess's Shears. And as long as this Pokemon is on your bench, your fighting Pokemon's attacks do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So really, really good way to boost up fighting damage. And we're not going to focus on the attack here. We're never going to use Diamond Rain. If you do, you're in a very bad spot, but the ability is amazing. But this is a Prism Star, so we can only run 1 of these, which that's perfectly fine. And that's another reason why I'm running the Regirock EX with it, because it's like a weaker version of Diancie. If this guy says all your fighting Pokemon do 10 more damage. So have these 2 on your bench and all your fighting Pokemon doing 30 more damage. That's pretty much a free choice band. So really, really awesome. And for our remaining Pokemon are just going to be the support lineups here. 2 copies of Remoraid and 2 copies of Octillery. Now you can run Zoroark if you want. It's pretty decent because it gives you another attacker. But the reason we're going with Octillery here is because there is a lot of fighting in the meta right now. And that's like giving your opponent 2 free prizes right then and there. So better to only give them 1 prize than 2. So that's my reasoning for Octillery. But again, if you prefer Zoroark, by all means. And last but not least, we have 2 copies of Tapu Lele just to search out supporters. Usual stuff. So with that, that does it for our Pokemon lineup here. Everything's revolving really around Zygarde GX here. And now let's go into our supporter lineup. So of course we have 3 copies of Professor Sycamore, very standard, along with 3 copies of Cynthia. These 2, just too good not to run. And I actually only run one N here, which is pretty unusual for me, I know. But with everything that we have, as far as like what we have for draw and what we're trying to do, you really only need one N. Sorry about that awkward little cut there, guys. The mail came, and yeah, all that good stuff. We had a neat little package. So let's get right into our supporter lineup here. Gonna be 3 copies of Professor Sycamore, of course, very standard, along with 3 copies of Cynthia. Can't run any deck without these, I feel. Once rotation happens, hopefully by then we'll have a good replacement for Sycamore. But until then, Cynthia's gonna probably be the best draw support in the game afterwards. And a little unusual for me, but I only run 1 copy of N in this deck because of all the ways we have to draw already with these 3 supporters, not to mention with Octillery. And also what we're trying to do here, where you only really need 1 N. Because not early game, but mid to late game, almost all of your supporter focus is going to be revolving around these 3 copies of Bonnie. Now, for Zygarde GX, this is basically our reset button. So, you can only play this card if there's a stadium in play, so that's one way to make it a little more balanced. You discard the stadium card. During this turn, your Zygarde GX can use its GX attack even if you have already used your GX attack. So this lets you use your GX attack over and over and over again to continuously make him invincible against EXs and GXs. So that's pretty much the whole point of this deck, is to just knock them out with all the boosted damage, make yourself invincible for next turn, play the body, do it again over and over and over again until you win. So the fact that you do have to discard a stadium in play is, you would think it's a little bit of a hiccup, but it does not have to be your stadium card. So let's say your opponent has a stadium card. Like, for example, let's say they played a parallel city against you. You can play the Bonnie, get rid of their parallel city, and still be able to use your Zygarde GX attack again. So this is our neat little reset button, which you could have asked Professor K. I called this a long time ago. Even though it's not exactly a reset button, it's something to a reset button. So I feel that eventually we will get a generic reset for GX attacks, because I personally feel that almost has to come with how our format is going. But that's just my opinion. And for our last supporter cards, we just run 3 copies of your boy Guzma. So other than Bonnie, there really isn't anything too spectacular about our supporter lineup here. It's all just pretty standard stuff. And now we go straight into our item cards. Alright, so we're going to start off here with 4 copies of Ultra Ball. Very, very important. Along with the 4 copies of Max Elixir. Because even though the Zygarde's first attack can accelerate from the discard, we don't want that to be our only method of accelerating. So we want to make sure that Zygarde's at 4 energy as soon as possible. So that's why we have all the acceleration we can get. Alright, next up, it's going to be 3 copies of Choice Band to help boost up our Zygarde's damage a little bit more. So he will be doing 180 damage by himself. And then with Diancie, it's 200. Along with Regirock will be 210 damage, which knocks out pretty much all the important things in the meta right now. So having Choice Band and these 2 on your bench using Verdict GX is knocking out pretty much everything and making yourself invincible. Even for something like Gardevoir GX, like even though it won't knock out the Gardevoir, you're completely invincible against it. So definitely a really good setup to have. And along with the 3 Choice Band, I'll also run 3 copies of Floatstone, mainly for our Regirock, Octillery, and Diancie. There it is, in the Diancie. But it can be used for Tapu Lele if it gets stuck in the octave, and we don't want to waste an energy to retreat. So, definitely, Floatstone has a lot of good uses as always. I am not looking forward to having to replace this with Escape Board once rotation happens, but do what you gotta do. Next up, we run 2 copies of Field Blower. Again, very, very standard and obvious, just to get rid of tools and stuff, because since we are relying on Diancie and Regirock to boost our damage, we don't like Garbodor. We do not like Garbodor whatsoever. And last but not least, for my items, I run 1 copy of Palpad, mainly to recycle our Bonnies, in case we end up having to use Verdict GX more times than we would have originally planned. But of course, you can also give out your other supporter cards too that you would need for the time being, but this is mainly to help recycle our bodies. And that does it for our item lineup. And next up is our stadiums, because there's a few more in here that I would normally run. So, gonna be running 2 copies of Brooklet Hill and 2 copies of Scorched Earth. So the reason we have a lot is because, as I said before, the Bonnie, you have to discard a stadium in play. Of course, preferably, it wants to be your opponent's stadium that you discard, but there are some decks out there that run very low or absolutely no stadiums whatsoever. So you have to rely on your own, and you might as well make them stadiums that you could really benefit from, which Brooklyn Hill, of course, is probably the biggest one in my opinion, because you can search your deck for a basic water or fighting and put it onto the bench. So it's a way to get out your Zygardes, but mainly, more importantly, these two. It's a way to get these out for free without having to waste an Ultra Ball. So that's really, really awesome. And Scorched Earth is another reason why I only run 1 N. It's more draw for us, because we discard a fighting energy and we draw 2 cards. And that's mentioned it helps Cell Connector to be able to smack and recharge that energy that we discarded. So if we're going to run discard fodder for Bonnie, might as well make him very useful discard fodder. And now, last but not least, our energy counts. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We run 9 basic fighting energy and 4 double colorless energy. I do not run strong energy in here, mainly because there's really no reason to. Because Cell Connector can't get back strong energy. Not to mention, we want this set up as quickly as possible. So, Max Elixir, unfortunately, can't get strong energy, and now we can Cell Connector. So, it would be like 3 attachments before we get attacked if we decide to use a strong energy. So, not to mention, with what I showed you, we're going to be doing 210 in our most ideal situations. So, really, it's not necessary, I feel. Not to mention, overall helps our consistency a bit. So yeah, that does it for Zygarde GX. If you guys enjoyed this deck profile, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And come back next time for our Battle Frontier Friday, which is actually going to be happening next week. Changing up how we do things here a little bit. Hopefully it works out really good. And we'll see you guys then. Take care. Have an awesome day.